Let me just say thank y'all for being here, and I want to thank all the sponsors for doing this. Jonathan, thank you. We could talk a lot about rural broadband. Y'all know the benefits of that, all the reasons why we need to be focused on broadband and, all the good things that come of it. But basically, I just want to talk for a minute about the wireless piece of that. I'm chair of the Communications, Technology, and Internet Subcommittee, and one of the things that we do in the subcommittee is look at those issues and try to find good, the right solutions for all that. And we, of course, we do oversight with FCC and others. But one of the things that I do is I go through the agenda there and go through the hearings there. I think of Arkansas as a microcosm for some of the challenges that we have with broadband in America today. And the reason I say that, and I look at some of our sponsors, they know Arkansas pretty well. If you look at Arkansas, you definitely have the mountainous areas, which is the Ozark Mountains and the Ouachita Mountains, and so that terrain presents issues with trying to deliver telecommunication services. Also, you have some of those areas have very small populations, and so that's a big challenge. And then we have another part of the state that's flat, and it's in the Mississippi Delta. In fact, over in East Arkansas, there are areas of the state where if you have an acre of land, it will fall 1 inch per acre. So it's just literally as flat as a pancake. And that's great. It's great for farming, but there again, you get a lot of rural areas out there that need services like that, need communication services, and if they want to stay current, get the efficiency, et cetera, but it presents a challenge. And then we also have parts of the state that the soil isn't great for row crop farming, so you see a lot of poultry, but you also see a lot of timber. We have a ton of timber in our state. We have some national forests, but we also have a lot of private land. So you kind of have that, and that again creates some issues, some challenges. And then you have what a lot of people have is you have the urban or suburban challenges. And sometimes, you get into low-income issues or underserved issues there. And, our biggest city in the whole state is only 200,000. Little Rock's only 200,000 people. So it's not like we're not New York City here, we're not LA, we're not Chicago. We understand that. So maybe ours is a little bit more like a suburban. But for us, what you also have is out in the counties. We have 75 counties. Out in the counties, it's very common for the county seat to have maybe 15,000, maybe. Depends on every county. And then you may have a few other towns in the county that maybe, total another 15,000. So here again, you get little clusters of population with lots of expanse between. So it just creates challenges. Like I said, I think in a lot of ways Arkansas is a microcosm because you see a little bit of everything in our state when it comes to trying to provide wireless technology and trying to connect to the internet. So let me give you one example of our state. We have a little bitty town. It's on Interstate 40, and it's called Lead Hill. I know y'all never heard of it, Lead Hill. Most people in Arkansas haven't heard of it, except for it does have an exit off the interstate. But Lead Hill has a grand total of 300 people that live there, okay? But Lead Hill is the center for a school district. They draw a lot of kids from around the county, and they have a little school there. It's a small school, but nonetheless, good little school. And it does have a fiber connection, and they run about 50 megabits per second in that fiber in that school. And what they've done in that school is they've tried to be very innovative with technology. So every 5th grader has an iPad, and they use that. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's the right thing to do. So here you are at Lead Hill. Who would have thought a few years ago that Lead Hill might have the same access to technology that you might get in Little Rock, but really might get in Silicon Valley, right? And that's the power of this technology, is you can, if you do it the right way, you really open it up for everybody. It's a total game changer. So no matter where you are, you can provide that service for people. And so people in our state are very committed to that. I know all over the country they're very committed. They want to see more and more of this type of access all over the place. So I think part of my job as chairman of the CTI subcommittee is to try to find ways to get there and do that. So let me just talk about farming. You know, most people know that Arkansas is the home of Walmart. Walmart is not a Fortune 500 company, it's a Fortune 1 company. I was just there Saturday. It's kind of every year it's either Exxon or Walmart's the biggest company in the U.S. But anyway, it's an amazing company, and we're proud of Walmart. We love them. We love our other Fortune 500 companies, and we have 5 or 6 that are based in Arkansas, started in Arkansas. And we're proud of that. But the truth is, agriculture is our biggest industry. Again, we love all these other people, but agriculture is our biggest industry. And agriculture is kind of the poster child, really, for Arkansas business. And what you have is a ever-changing landscape for farmers. And so much of that is about technology. Technology is a big thing for farmers. People up here don't understand that. They don't appreciate it. Here inside the Beltway, you've kind of lost connection to the land. But all around the country, in fact, in most states, agriculture is either the #1 industry or #2. Like in Michigan, it's the second largest industry in Michigan. You know, it's a huge industry in California. I mean, we don't always think about that, but pretty much everywhere you go, agriculture is going to be, you know, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 in terms of the size of industry. So what you're seeing now is because we're trying to get more broadband out there to rural America, and a lot of this is wireless, you're seeing more and more applications for that. And Hank, who's with me, he and I found an app over the weekend, and on that app, what's it called, Hank?
This is the Progressive Farmer.
Okay, Progressive Farmer. So on the Progressive Farmer app, and there's a lot of these, we just happen to pick this one. On the Progressive Farmer app, that farmer who can be, again, it's on his iPad, and, or, you know, I'm sure it's available on other tablets as well. But, you know, that farmer can be, you know, if he has wireless connection, he can be in his tractor or his combine, he can be on his pickup truck, he can be in town, he can be in his shop, he can, you know, be in his office paying bills or whatever. And by going to that, he can look at weather conditions, he can look at market prices, he can get news about, you know, different farm-related stuff. What else is on there, Hank?
I think, you know, it's videos, precipitation amounts.
Yeah. So, you know, in our state, again, cotton, rice, soybeans, corn, wheat, all kind, you know, we can grow just about anything in our state. We don't ever grow sugar and never have grown tobacco, but basically just about everything else we either do or can raise in our state. So, you know, that's a great application for someone like that. And the University of Arkansas has just released one called the Corn Advisor app. Right now it's only available on the Android system, but basically what the U of A says, it can turn a producer's smartphone or tablet into an anytime, anyplace corn expert, right? So this is just an app. I mean, again, we never think about this here inside the Beltway, but if you're a corn farmer, that app, University of Arkansas, with all of its science and all of its resources, can be a huge benefit to kind of more or less carry in your hip pocket with you all the time. You know, it's a great asset. And so that's what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to figure out pest control, nutrients, weather conditions, prices, whatever, you know, you have that resource right now. And of course, see John Deere's one of the sponsors here today. John Deere, y'all know, if you don't know this, you should know this, that these tractors and combines and other vehicles, these farm vehicles that they make, are so much more sophisticated today than they were, say, 10 or 15 years ago. It's unbelievable. The advances in technology, the connectivity, the things that they're able to do. I was on a rice farm a couple of weeks ago, and they were showing me some of the new things that they have on their John Deere tractors and their combines, and it's just unbelievable. But nonetheless, that's very important. And again, if you think about farming as business, these are business people, and we're trying to find efficiency in the office place. Well, why can't we find efficiency on the farm? And that's really what this is about. And it's driving that, and it's very competitive, and we want that. And the good news is that the more broadband we get out there, the more wireless connectivity we get out there, you're going to see more and more applications, more and more innovations, just like you do in the other areas of the market. So, you know, this is great. Now, the catch is, of course, you need that rural, that broadband wireless connectivity. And I think that's where we come in terms of Congress. So the question is, how do we make that happen? You know, you look at the Telecommunications Act, which is now almost 20 years old, and you look at the amazing amount of innovation and the investment and really the fact that it's been driving the U.S. economy in many ways. That innovation and technology has been great. So the Telecom Act, you know, deserves a lot of credit there, but really what it does is it sets out a framework for the private sector to plug into. The private sector knows what the rules are. They can go to work, and that's exactly what they've done. And we've seen a very, very competitive marketplace in all of these areas. Again, we've seen lots of innovation, lots of investment, and it's been great. I mean, the innovation that we see is just off the charts. I mean, they're doing things now that, you know, people couldn't have imagined 20 years ago when they passed the act. But in fact, I think in the entire Telecom Act of 1996, I think the word internet is mentioned twice. Okay, you know, I had someone tell me the other day, so we need to rewrite that law because the internet's only mentioned twice, and that basically was about long distance versus local telephone service. Well, I'm thinking, we've had a lot of success here. Why do we want to go in and change the law? And I think that's, you know, one of the challenges that we have is in Congress, we need to be very careful that whatever we do, we don't slow down this industry. We don't slow down investment. We don't create uncertainty. We don't do things that, you know, maybe well-intentioned, but end up hurting this expansion that we're seeing all across the board here. So in the CTI subcommittee, again, Communication Technology and the Internet, in the CTI subcommittee, we're going to finish this week the fourth in a series of 4 hearings. We call them state of hearings. We started with state of rural, state of video, state of wireless, and this week we'll have state of wireline. So this is a chance for us on the subcommittee to hear from industry and hear from stakeholders, hear from public interest groups, consumer groups, to hear from them about what's going on, what we need to know, what the lay of the land is. But it's also been great for us on the subcommittee to hear from our colleagues, because we have about, it's 35% of the subcommittee is new to the subcommittee and generally new to these issues. Some of these people are new to the committee, so a lot of folks we don't really know where they are, so it's been helpful, I think, for everybody, you know, information going both ways. But the wireless hearing was very interesting. We did this a couple of months ago, and one of the things we heard over and over and over was spectrum. We kept talking about spectrum. Every witness kept coming back to spectrum, how important it is to have spectrum. We talked about the innovative technologies, things like 4G and Wi-Fi, and all that was great, but it seems like every time we turn around, they kept coming back to spectrum. But they also talked about this incredible expansion. Cisco has something they call the Visual Networking Index Forecast. Anybody ever heard of that? I don't know what that means. Good. Well, you know what that means. But anyway, they said in 2017, Americans will be using 1.1 billion mobile devices. Think about that. 2017, 1.1 billion mobile devices will be used in this country, and that's going to be 70% of all the internet traffic. 70% of all internet traffic will be on mobile devices. The Pew Center said that in 2011, 35% of the country used a smartphone. That was in 2011, 35%. In 2013, it's 56%. So it's going up about a full 10 percentage points every year, again, which is huge. It's a total game changer. And you also know the trend with younger consumers. Most of them don't have wireline telephones, or they don't really have desktops. They're just going more and more mobile. And but it's not just young people. That's happening all over. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were saying they don't have a phone in their house, and I said, well, that's funny, because I don't have a phone in my house either. I've gone to a wireless phone myself. So anyway, what we can do, I think, on the committee and in the Senate generally is just try to continue to provide effective oversight. Lots of issues there. We could talk about some of those. But when I was talking about spectrum a minute ago in that hearing, one thing we talked about quite a bit at the hearing, some of y'all may have been there, is how do we get access to more spectrum? And one of the things that we know is that the government owns a lot of spectrum. And people talk about the Department of Defense, they probably have the lion's share of it, but there are many other agencies that have spectrum for various reasons. So how do you get access to that? What's the right way to do that? We actually had a classified briefing in the Commerce Committee at the beginning of this conference where we talked about that. And, how do you do all that? Well, basically, I think what you recognize is, say let's take the Department of Defense, since they're the biggest one. The Department of Defense has a lot of spectrum, and a lot of this they've kind of inherited over the years when nobody needed it or knew how to use it or knew what to do with it, but they have a lot of spectrum. But just, in fairness to them, just as we use more spectrum today, we use a lot more wireless and a lot more stuff like that. So do they. They have just as many demands as we do. So when you think about some of this kind of whiz-bang technology that you know about, of course there's a lot that you don't know about just because it's not in the news very often, some of it's even classified, but something like a drone, that's going to require wireless connection at some level, some way, somehow. And so, anyway, they are using more and more, they need more and more, and basically I think the bottom line from DoD standpoint is they would say that we're not opposed to giving up our spectrum, but 2 or 3 things need to happen. One, it's going to be expensive because we've made a big investment in this spectrum. We're going to have to get off the spectrum, and it's going to be money and transition. Second, it's going to take some time. Can't do it overnight. We've got a lot invested, not just in the U.S., but all around the world. And the other thing is, it's complicated. We need to talk about maybe in some cases sharing spectrum. And there's been an example of several years ago, the Department of Defense feels like they were promised that if you move off of this spectrum right now, we won't ask you to move again. Well, guess what? We're asking them to move again. So some of this is you need to try to think really long-term and think about, how to best do this. So I know that this week, DOD, or last week, I guess, DOD submitted a proposal to the NTIA to move some of their spectrum. We hadn't had a chance to really analyze that. I think it's just now getting that. We'll spend some time in the office looking at it. Y'all may have strong opinions on that. I don't know. But obviously, we'll need to study the opinion and talk to NTIA, FCC, colleagues, DOD, whoever, to see if we feel like that's headed in the right direction. My guess is that's going to be a very good start. That's my guess without knowing anything in there. Probably a real good starting point. And also, we'll reach out to other agencies. We'll continue to talk. The other thing that when you talk to government agencies about this, they would like incentives to do this. In other words, they want us, whether it be the federal government at large or the private sector through like auctions, et cetera, to pay for it, right? And everybody's feeling the budget crunch. And again, we'll have to work through all that. There's no decisions been made on that recently. But so those are just some of the issues that we're going to deal with in CTI, and I look forward to it. We have a hearing coming up this week, and then we're going to do a hearing in Arkansas over August recess to talk about some stuff going on in Arkansas. Again, it's kind of helpful because it's a microcosm, I think. And, we're going to continue to look at all these issues like incentive auctions, the spectrum. One thing about broadband is maybe the technology's there to do it, but there's, in a lot of rural America, there's not a very high take rate. That a lot of people may have. Maybe some have access, some don't, but those who do access, they don't always take it. And this is something that Jonathan's been working on for a long time. It's something we're concerned about. So we don't know exactly what hearings we'll have, but those are some of the issues that we're going to be working on over the next, certainly over the course of this year, probably into next year. So we want to encourage growth. We want to continue to give some oversight to the FCC and others. We don't want to stifle innovation. We want for America to always be the place where people innovate and they invest and they do great things. We want to stay on the cutting edge like we have been recently. But we also don't want two Americas, where if you're in urban or suburban America, you get the latest and greatest, and that's good, but then rural America is totally left behind. Again, back to the farming. Agriculture is not the only industry in rural America, but it is truly a very strong backbone for America. And if that gets weak, then I think America really goes into decline. So this is important to me when it comes to broadband. We talk a lot about infrastructure, how we should invest in infrastructure. I'm a believer in investing in infrastructure, and I think we ought to pay for it. That may make me different than some politicians in Washington. But I think we ought to pay for it. But if you look at sort of the history of the country and look at the incredible economic growth we've had over the last 225 years plus, if you look at all that, infrastructure has played a very key role in that. You know, the origins of the country, coastal, connected to England, you know, by and large, coastal, needed those ports. We started moving inland. Rivers were critical. Of course, if you read the U.S. Constitution, they talk about coastal roads and things like that, trying to get communication from place to place in this very big and diverse and sometimes difficult to navigate country of ours. And then, you know, it's not too far after that where you start seeing things like the steam engine and river transportation really became key. And you start seeing cities grow up along the rivers, all in the interior. They become big trading centers. And then not long after that, railroads come in. And I know in y'all's home states, just like mine, if you know your history of the state pretty well, you know, I can go to places in Arkansas where I know that this used to be one of the largest towns in Arkansas. And when the railroad came in, they moved it 15 miles that way, and this town just totally dried up and blew away. You know, and that's the way all over the country. And so now, you know, then it became, after railroads, maybe it became airports, and now then interstates, you know, and it keeps going. But now it's rural broadband. It's broadband. It's broadband. And again, the focus there, because of the market conditions, et cetera, is going to be in rural America. That's the area you don't want to leave behind. It's harder to serve, fewer people, less return on investment, but we need to do the things, and we'll get into universal service fund, all kinds of issues there. We need to do the things that make sure that rural America can take advantage of this great, innovative, global economy, just like everybody else can. So, you know, those are some of the challenges and some of the things we'll be working on. Jonathan, again, thank you for having me, and I'm committed to doing everything I can to try to help, so thank you. You'll know we're a resource. If you hadn't met Hank yet, Hank is on my staff, and if I'm ever not around, feel free to call Hank. So, thank you. You want me to give him your cell number? No. But anyway, thank you all for having me, and I appreciate it. I'm sorry I've got to run out here in just a minute, but thank you.